Hello, welcome, and thanks for listening to Carbon Cli-MATES, an energy podcast dedicated to discussing all things energy, carbon, and sustainability. We also like to talk about what's getting hot, aside from our planet. I'm your host, Enya, and today I'm joined by my Carbon Cli-MATE and co-host, Conor. Hi, Conor.
Hello.
So yeah, how you doing?
Yeah, very good. Delighted to be here. We touched on earlier, it's my first podcast ever. I'm very
Yeah.
excited.
Mhm.
So if I go off on a tangent and you have to edit huge portions of this out, I only can apologise.
It's part of the job. Part of the job. So yeah, can you tell us what are you doing this weekend?
So this weekend, I'm actually going over to a good friend of mine's wedding in Canterbury, over in Kent. So ironically, there's myself and another one of my colleague, well, not colleagues, but a good friend of mine who works with a competitor, technically, in terms
Right,
of
okay.
MEP.
Mhm.
And then we're going over to our friend's wedding, who's now a director in an MEP company based down in Canterbury. So really looking forward to it, and should be good fun. And hopefully the weather kind of gets a wee bit brighter than it has been the last couple of days. But I
Yeah,
think
it's
it's
been
supposed to be nice
terrible.
there.
That's good. That'll be nice. You have to get the shades on.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So can you tell us your job title?
Yeah, so I am a principal mechanical building services engineer. I work with a company called Mott MacDonald. I actually joined Mott MacDonald in 2012. So when I was doing a placement year in university, and then the director at the time asked me if I would stay on full time while I finished off my masters, and I said, "Sure, why not?" Makes sense to continue learning as I'm doing work within the industry, and I kind of knew what I liked to at that point. So yeah, I've been with them since 2012, so that's coming on 12 years actually, which
It
is quite
is.
crazy.
It is scary when you say the length of time you've been working in this industry out
Yeah,
loud.
definitely. Yeah.
So,
So yeah, that's me. That's what I do, and manage a team of engineers from graduate level to engineer level. And then also within Mott MacDonald as a company, I sit as the global chair for digital for building services within the
right.
company. So that's another item which is quite difficult and
Very,
important for the how we progress as a company.
very good. And so 12 years, is that how long you've been in this sector fully? Like,
Not exactly, because I suppose technically from when I was about 15, I started working sort of over the summers and stuff within sites. So initially worked doing shuttering and steel tying
okay.
when I was 15 and 16 in the summer. Probably shouldn't have when I was 15, but like I'm from Donegal, so we just kind of do things a wee bit rogue sometimes. And then after that, I was lucky enough to do some work within a combined cycle gas turbine down in Cork with a company called Jones Engineering.
Very good.
So yeah, so I've been in the industry and thereabouts since I was about 15, so
Wow. Okay.
quite a long time.
That's brilliant. Well, say when you were at school, did you ever envisage yourself in this role?
Yeah, maybe not exactly this role, but definitely within engineering. I always had a real interest within the industry, and I was always quite practical in terms of things that, I would have, gone and like a Meccano as a Christmas present when I was a child. But I really enjoyed it, and I knew that I wanted to do engineering. I suppose one of the things was the type of engineering that I thought I was doing. I suppose it technically was always just referred to as mechanical engineering. And I suppose one of the things that I found was actually a lot of the stuff that I had done, say working with plumbing systems and sort of in towards heating systems and ventilation, sort of in summer jobs and things like that, were actually more akin to building services with mechanical bias.
Yeah.
So I suppose when I went to university and I seen the course was energy and building services, I kind of maybe was more focused on the energy aspect of that, but then transpired that I sat in probably the first couple of lectures and realized that the second part that they're talking about is actually what I really understand. How did I manage to stumble into this? It was just kind of a bit of luck, to be honest.
Very good.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
always had a real interest in being involved within engineering. And I suppose probably coming from an early age, my father was working in that industry as well. So I kind of
Mhm.
thought, yeah, sure, I'll just do the same thing.
That's yeah, I have talked to a couple of people who said, "Oh, my parents were in these
Yeah.
roles." So, like, yeah, like you see them do it, you see them successful, and you're like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go do that." My dad's a jeweler. My mom's a holistic therapist. So, and I've got like, kind of nature towards any of them. I remember doing a shift in his shop, and I'm like, I'm not made for people. I like a people-facing role, not at all. But brilliant. Thanks, Connor, for telling us a bit about yourself. Okay, so we're gonna talk. Today's like subject is gonna be just what you said in your job title, building services engineering, and just how you became talk about how you became a principal building services engineer.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna spit some facts at you, and they're gonna be, really tough. So just like bear with me, okay?
Fantastic.
But before we delve into it, I've got a joke for you, okay?
Okay, let's go.
Oh no, it is actually terrible.
No, no,
It really is.
I'm all for the pun joke, so I'm really excited.
Okay, did you hear about the person who invented the escalator?
No.
They were mechanically inclined. I'm,
Very good.
I'm holding up a sign that says laugh like that's
No, that's really quite good. I'm definitely going to use that this weekend.
Yeah.
There it is. That's my joke, my
You-
introduction joke to all of
you-
these new people I meet.
You'll be like the star of the party. It was like, I know you're getting married, but this is my time.
Land wearing white as well.
Okay, so we kind of touch on what building services industry covers, and I'm gonna shout out your as like your colleague Max McComb,
Yeah.
but his episode and just everything it touches. But I just want to go a bit more into it. So according to CIBSE.org website for training under why I choose building services as a career, well, building services directly affects people's lives. And they kind of give us an example. Have you ever thought about the room or building you're in and how comfortable you feel? And this can actually have a direct effect on your health and well-being. Inside us all, we are able to feel the effect of like good temperature. So I know when it's like too warm in the room, I'm like, oh, too warm, I get distracted or fall asleep, and it just makes you lose concentration. And ventilation is especially important for the likes of, I think, as we all learned a couple of years ago, like mitigating the effect of contagious diseases. So that's good. And there has been a significant increase of people entering the building service industry in the last 10 years. I know that was a long time period, but when I was looking up, wasn't Invest and it was ever UK National Career Service set about engineering, like from 2011 to 2021, the amount of people that entered engineering has increased by like it's just under 1 million.
Yeah. And to be quite honest, I think probably still need a lot more. I'll give you a really good factoid. This was the current president of CIBSE was over for an event actually that Max and the team within CIBSE Young Engineers Network had arranged for a sort of a walkthrough from young engineers right through to fellowship of CIBSE and everything in between. And it was the minutes of a meeting from CIBSE originally was two separate entities. I must actually make sure I can remember these every single time, but one was effectively Heating and Ventilation Institute, and then the other was the Illumination. I think it was the Illumination Institute, and they came together. So the minutes of the Heating Engineers board meeting AGM in 1906 was expressly calling out that there was a significant need for more engineers and more personnel to come into this industry because they were severely lacking. And still now looking in 2024, we're probably in a very similar position that we still need more people to be invested into this topic, into this type of engineering, because, as you rightly said, it affects so many things within the spaces that we use. If we look at the perfect example of a building, you touched on it in terms of like the terminology is unhealthy building syndrome. So you get this feeling if you don't have enough natural daylight, if you don't have good ventilation, if you don't have good quality of air in a space, you can start to feel very unwell and you can actually develop a sickness from that. And really, one of the things that I used to think building services was hard to describe to people because it was kind of like, oh, I work in like, buildings and I do heating systems and
Yeah.
ventilation systems and plumbing and waste systems. But it's actually sort of from speaking to people, I've kind of found it's even easier to describe. And it's simply saying, when you go into a space and you feel comfortable, how have you achieved that?
Yeah.
Through good engineering design. And
Yeah.
that's what I do.
That doesn't happen by itself. Like,
No, it doesn't. And it does. It takes an entire team of people. And obviously, I'll talk from a more building services mechanical bias, but there's obviously a huge focus within the CIBSE community into the likes of mechanical design, electrical design, sustainability, low carbon and zero carbon as well, in terms of how that entire industry comes together to deliver good building services to occupants.
Speaking of carbon, because buildings make up 40% of the UK's carbon emissions, this is why we need as many people as possible, because then we need to get these buildings as sustainable as possible, because people live a sustainable life, hopefully.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, okay, so thank you for listening to that tidbit, Conor. So, you're mechanical building services principal engineer, or principal mechanical building services engineer. Apologies, I'm not too sure what order they should go in.
Don't worry.
But what do you love most about your job?
So I would say from my job, what I love the most is actually going in to probably meetings with clients.
Mhm.
And like it'll be a full multidisciplinary meeting. So you're talking like civil structures, mechanical, electrical. You've probably got architects in there as well. Generally, we'll be working through the whole discussion of what they want to achieve in terms of what their outcomes are, and actually going, okay, how are we going to achieve a comfortable building? How are we going to achieve a building that you're going to walk into and say, yes, this is operating in an efficient manner, and it's a building that I'm actually satisfied with. So I always find that a really rewarding piece where you're sitting as a part of a multi-disc team and you're going, okay, how can we get towards that actual end goal? And there is also a huge portion of really getting into the nitty gritty with a client and saying, what do you want to achieve? Because I think that's actually quite important. Sometimes they're not fully sure. They know they want a building, but they maybe don't understand what exactly they want to achieve out of that or how they could improve what they're going to perceive to be an improved outcome for whatever they're using that building for.
I've come across that problem before, and I find like in our line of work, it's often to do with terminology. So it could be someone maybe wanting, it's like, oh yeah, like, show me the improvement this wall makes. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, what do I need to do? And then it's like, oh, right, okay. You just mean, like, have you ever hit or touched on the London plan at all? Or the
Very briefly, but I've generally, because I haven't done a huge portion in London, I've kind of steered clear. But there was at one stage a hotel I was looking at that I started reading the London plan. I went, whoa, that is a document.
It is a hefty document. It is. But for energy, it has kind of an energy hierarchy. You divide stuff up into. So the big green is the final building. So you're like, this is what the building's going to be. It's going to be amazing. And then there's the be clean and be lean. So I was able to show, I was like, yeah, okay, this is at the be lean stage, and then this is at the be green stage. Like, look at the difference, like, the improvement. But yeah, like, so like, yeah, it's great when you're like talking to the client or the developer, you're just like, oh, this is what you mean. Like, And
it is important as well to, demonstrate the value that you're going to deliver to that client. But then also when you're sitting in another scenario, maybe on the same project, but you're dealing with maybe a contractor or somebody who's actually in the midst of the construction, is to reiterate the process and the design and the rationale that has been put into that final systems design, and what we're actually trying to achieve there in terms of maybe, set goals from a client perspective, or maybe there's a specific regulation that we're actually trying to achieve. The rationale as to why we've gone down that route is because of X, Y, and Z.
That's great. So, another question just about your job title.
Yeah.
So how did it feel when you got principal mechanical building services engineer? Like, was responsibility like automatically thrust upon you? You're like, this is what you have to do now.
Potentially, I guess. I been I've always been of the opinion that you kind of start to try to do the role that you want to have before you actually achieve it.
Oh yeah.
So, I kind of would have tried to just deliver what I would have perceived to be a principal engineer's level of, delivery, commitment, management, sort of commercial success. Probably from when as soon as I became senior engineer.
That's
But yeah, I think it's a good method. I think for younger people in their careers to take a look at and say, okay, where do I want to go with my career? What are the steps to get there? If I happen to be a graduate engineer at the moment and I want to move to engineer status, what do I see as being the, not just the minimum, but what do I see as being a good level of delivery from an engineer? Okay,
Yeah.
let's get to that point now. And then when it comes time to have a discussion with, your senior management or where you're talking about your actual progression in the company, it's very easy to say, this is what is perceived to be a good, scope of delivery for an engineer. I'm already achieving that, and I'm actively trying to go better than that, even though I haven't been given that. So realistically, that's probably not even a discussion anymore. It's like yeah, I'm already there. I'm thinking about the next one though. I think that is good, and I think it is important for certain individuals who maybe have that interest in progressing up through a company, and to be realistic and do look back at yourself in terms of what you're achieving and what your actual like going deliverables are.
It's a good it's a good target for people coming in.
Yeah.
Like I've seen it here where like maybe graduates or come in and they're like, oh, you're a senior engineer, okay. It's like someday,
Yeah.
someday they'll be me.
Yeah, and also to be quite honest, like I'm very lucky that I've achieved chartership in my career so far, and hopefully at some stage I'd like to achieve fellow within CIBSE as well. Um, but whenever you're commercially responsible for certain projects, you are aware that even the designation of chartered engineer holds more value technically from a client perspective in terms of, what they will, pay for that individual. And when
Yeah.
you are commercially responsible and maybe you haven't achieved it at that point, you do look at it and go, okay, I'm putting in just as much effort as maybe somebody that is perceived by a client to be potentially of more value. It's not really a nice way to put it, but you kind of maybe internally go, I'm gonna get there because
Yeah.
I rate myself, and I'm gonna get my engineering practice report put together, and I'm gonna move on with this.
Just right.
Yeah.
Just right. Like, that's great. Thanks for explaining about what you love most about your
Yeah,
job.
sorry, I went off there.
But so see to get here, what sort of training did you do? I'm talking right from the start. So maybe the likes of, okay, if you're at school and you're at A levels, like
Right. So, training at A levels or like my end going through the Irish Leaving Cert, which they're pretty much the same. Okay, I'll have nobody say that they're totally different. But I suppose there maybe wasn't anything too major involved at that level. Regards like specific training, I did have I suppose I took enjoyment out of like STEM sort of science, technology, engineering, sort of style subjects, mathematics as well. Ironically, though, I will say this: I didn't do very well in my maths in Leaving Cert, and then I went to university and I got straight A's.
Oh my goodness.
So the maths ended up not being easier, but because it was more applied to what I was actually doing, I found that like the likes of doing matrices made sense because I was looking at how heat moved through a wall. So that
Yeah.
made sense to me, as opposed to doing the minus B formula, which in some instances I was going, I really don't get why I'm doing this.
That's I stopped maths at GCSE.
Yeah.
And like I had no idea I was gonna be in like kind of this like sector. And then as you're saying, the first year it's for like engineering degrees and the Ulster do, it's all pure maths. Like
Yeah.
and I'm like, what is this? I'm like, oh, okay. The
Yeah.
next one. Got this. I got this.
Yeah, so I suppose from A level sort of training, there wasn't anything too major. I was very lucky then that I'd say mostly due to my personal statement, because as I said, I wasn't very good at mathematics, but I was all right at engineering, which was a subject within the secondary school I'd gone to. I then was lucky enough to get into Ulster University on their BEng of the Energy and Building Services Engineering. And I kind of just said, look, I'm obviously very keen to do well in this, so I'm going to like really put in the effort and try my hardest. And then in second year, I was lucky enough, there was sort of like a carrot that was sort of dangled in front of everybody. If you get over 60% the whole way through, that then you can move on to the MEng. So in second year, got sort of, I was doing good enough, but they were like, do you want to do the MEng? And I kind of looked at it and I was like, yeah, I think I want to do the MEng, and really twigged that, I didn't know if it was going to be anything, that was going to be definitive in terms of my career or anything like that. But then after third year, which was like a placement year, having been in the industry and worked in it and went, yeah, actually, this is something that I do enjoy doing. I spoke to a number of engineers who had maybe gone down the route of doing the BEng or the Bachelor's of Engineering, and then they were sort of in the process of doing a technical report, because there's kind of two methodologies towards achieving membership of CIBSE and then CEng, alongside others in terms of associate and LICIP and a number of other designations. They said that actually, if they had had a master's, they felt that it would have been maybe a more straightforward process. So I kind of went, okay, perfect. I'm on with the option to do the master, so I think I'll definitely continue on and do it. And it was for one additional year instead of doing it part-time for maybe three.
Okay.
Yeah. So
very good. And then the rest, like as you're saying, you've been in the industry, and that practical experience probably like really helped as well.
Yeah, definitely. For instances of, getting straight into projects where maybe I was ultimately responsible for what was being delivered, obviously through with the addition of there's quality assurance, quality checking and approval process in my company is what it's referred to. That's obviously like standard, and it's just a given that should really exist within any industry. To be quite honest, I would like to hope that it's not just in building services, but being responsible for what was coming out from the company, and also taking the stance that that's my name on the drawings. I had a real big thing about having my name on the drawings. That I was like, I really wanted it to be there. So like we used to have a thing that was like designed by, drawn by,
check by, or
draw and check, engineer and check, coordination and approver. So I knew I wasn't going to get approver. I knew that. I knew I probably wasn't going to do engineer and check, but I really wanted to make sure that like drawn by like had actually my name against it, because I was like, I have drawn this. This is my work. And then because I was very like proud of what I was producing, I think that's always kind of really driven on, in terms of what was coming out from me as an engineer. Then beyond that, Mott MacDonald were very good in terms of they have an entire graduate program, which runs from as soon as you graduate, obviously from a university, or you come into the business at a graduate level. You do things like commercial management. There was commercial management, general project management. There's an entire thing on how to like network. There was a really good one, which was all about presentation skills, which was actually fantastic. It ended up being a really good 2 days, and they sort of bring you to different offices and stuff to do that. Right. So you get like, I went to Bristol office and did the presentation skills. I went to Glasgow and did the commercial management. So it's quite nice.
Yeah. Got to travel about the UK.
Yeah. So, and it was really good to build up my network of people within the company, and obviously get to know people and say, hey, look, I remember we were on the same introduction course. Oh, I didn't realize you were based in Bristol. How are you getting on? How are things?
And then, like, if they maybe have a particular department, you're like, I'll call Kyle in that department.
Yeah, exactly. You know Kyle too.
He's a laugh. So brilliant. Okay, well, thanks for explaining a bit about your training and the prep you did to enter the role. It obviously paid off because you're a principal mechanical building services engineer now. Okay, so I like to come to the kind of section now where I like to ask a couple of questions.
Yeah.
And I tailor it towards each of my guests. And then because you're like a chair within CIBSE, well, it's like, yeah, okay, so it'll be something about CIBSE, and kind of like focus the questions around that.
Yeah.
So this title, I kind of realized I sent this to you this morning, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to work on the title. Like, I've got till Friday, and then just didn't realize it was today. Today's Thursday, so it has not changed. So it is still the title. It's the principle of it, because principle Principal engineer, yeah.
I like it. It's good.
Well, like,
I was thinking about it as well. I was like, could be pull up a chair, but I love a wee fan.
oh my God, that's
Feel
amazing.
free to use it if you want.
I'm gonna edit it out and then use it in an episode. It's like, yeah, came up with it myself. Like, it's grand. Okay, so again, these are fun questions. So
Yeah.
best guess whenever.
We're getting on wrong.
So there are 4 related bodies to CIBSE. Okay, and they're called the Society. No, 4 of them start with the Society of them. Can you name me them?
Society of Lighting. Society of Lighting Engineers.
Yep.
That one. SOPHE, Society of Public Health Engineers.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, who else have we got?
I think there's one you actually mentioned, and I think you're chair of it, like the Society of. You said something about chair of digital.
Oh, so there's also digital engineering, but I'm not chair of that.
Oh,
I'm
right,
I'm
okay.
within my company. I'm the chair for digital for building services. But yeah,
Brilliant.
not actually on that. They actually do a whole host of really good training material
Mhm.
on digital engineering. So especially for people who maybe work in building services but are mainly down like a
Mhm.
more sort of technician route, there's a whole host of really good material there. So like common data environments, management drawings, how sort of I need to learn these off, but I remember looking at them and they're a really nice, like neat package of maybe 7 different key digital engineering and training resources, which are quite nice. Now the last one, I'll stop. Is it Society Facade?
You're right.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yes, sweet.
Oh, yes. It's 4 out of 4. Well done. Like,
Yeah, I have been in CIBSE since I joined
Yeah.
university, so I'd like to hope I should know them.
so then you should know.
Yeah.
So yeah, so there's Society of Facade. Do you have any idea of when that was set up at all?
Oh, Society of Facades.
That's actually a hard one. Like, so
I'm gonna say that it's probably 2006.
you're so close. It was 2003.
Oh, was it? All right. Yeah. Okay. I'll
They-
take that.
they-
I'll take that.
They probably got public in 2006. So
Oh,
like,
yeah. People only started listening to their music in 2006.
Can you guess how many members the Society of Light and Lighting has?
Oh,
I'll give you a clue. It's in the thousands.
yeah. I was gonna say maybe like 6,500.
You're so close again. It is 2,000.
Oh, 6,000. Okay.
Oh, sorry, 3,000.
Oh, it's 3,000. Double. There's so many really good lighting engineers. I know. I just assumed that they were all members.
Yeah, that's enough to have for that section. So did you know there's always also one institute related to CIBSE? Do you have any idea of what that institute is called?
Like, aside from CIBSE isn't the Chartered Institute of Building Services Engineers.
Listen, this is what Wikipedia tells me. This institute is related to CIBSE, and if I think it acts as something within CIBSE.
Something within CIBSE. Institute. Oh, I wasn't sure if maybe it was something to do with like ASHRAE, but they're obviously the American.
You're on the right lines, but I'll tell you because it is a bit tricky. So it's the Institute of Local Exhaust Ventilation Engineers.
Oh,
And that title was exhausting to say. 'Cause that's the second joke of the podcast. Like
these are fantastic. I'm definitely going to an MEP wedding this weekend. These are going to be mega.
But yeah. Okay, well, yeah, like that's the end of the it's the principal of it / pull up a chair. Okay. So like I hope you enjoyed it.
I have a building services joke myself. Do you want to hear it?
Yes, please.
Right. So this guy, right, used to love tractors. Love them. Absolutely love them. Then his partner at the time just said, "Look, honey, I can't keep being your partner if you don't stop talking about tractors. I just can't do this anymore." He said, "Right, I'm going to give up tractors." Left them behind, moved on with his life. 10 years later, he was in a pub. They hadn't introduced the smoking ban. He looked into the pub. It was full of smoke. His partner said, "Oh, I don't want to go in there. My clothes are going to stink of smoke. I can't." He looked into the pub. He opened up the door, and he just took one big breath and blew it all out the door. Sucked all the smoke from the room straight out the door. And one of the patrons in the pub said, "Oh my God, how did he do that?" His partner turned around and said, "Ex-Tractor fan."
Oh my God. That is amazing. I'm telling that to people like tomorrow.
100%.
Brilliant. Okay, wow. Well done on that. Okay, that wins an award, okay? Like, oh, brilliant. Okay, well, yeah, that's the official question round officially closed. So we're gonna get back to you now. So can you give an overview of the list of buildings you have worked on?
List of buildings. Okay. So earlier in my career, did a number of sort of projects with a local housing body. So it was actually going in and doing adaptations for people with the special needs or who required sort of additional care within the home. So although it wasn't, a building that I look at and say it was that building, sometimes when I'm driving in and around sort of Northern Ireland, I'll randomly say to my wife, I say, I did an adaptation in there. And it was small stuff, but it was actually really good to kind of cut my teeth and get involved within the, dealing with contractors, dealing with OTs within the healthcare trusts, dealing with clients, actually going out there and doing surveys. So weirdly, like a lot of small little villages and stuff all across Northern Ireland have little buildings. And I go, in a madhouse, which is an odd one to say to people. One of a really interesting project that I did as well was in the Shetland Islands.
Okay.
So there's a resource centre there called the Eric Gray Resource Centre. It's again for adults with learning disabilities. So it has a trampoline room, which I thought was the coolest thing ever. But yeah, it was really interesting to do design of MEP services, so like full spec in terms of domestic services, above ground waste, heating and ventilation systems. And within that facility, it was all a single floor with some really quite interesting architecture. So we worked with a Shetland Island based architect on that one, and then we delivered that whole thing to the Shetland Island Council. And we linked into the funniest district heating system or heat network I've ever heard in my life. It's called SHEAP. It's the SHEAP, so Shetland Heat Energy and Power Network.
Oh my god.
And I just thought that was really funny. But had some engagement with a Danish a company from Denmark, so Danish, called Howdy, and did a bit of work with them as well in terms of how we integrate the actual heat network into the building. And there was like some sort of penalties effectively if you delivered heat back at a higher temperature, because then the entire system wouldn't be as efficient because your delta T is too small, and then that means the pipe sizes are under pressure. That means you've got an excessive pressure through the system, so then your pumps need to operate more heavily. So yeah, we did a really interesting schematic, and it was one of the probably first and only time that I landed the site and it was exactly how I had it drawn, and I went, yeah, this is one of those ones that if it's gone wrong, it's totally going to be Conor's fault. But yeah, it worked really well, and they were really quite happy, and they managed to deliver back, I think, at like 30 degrees Celsius return temperature. So they really brought it all the way down. It's using like a CT circuit linked back into a VT circuit, linked back into an underfloor heating circuit. So it had like 3 stages of heat reduction and heat rejection effectively.
Jeez.
So it was interesting. I also worked as the mechanical lead for the TransLink Northwest Transport Hub, which lovely referred to as Derry/London Derry train station. So yeah, that's actually a really nice space. I don't know if you've been in it, but there's an entire like internal landscape architect has come in and done like fully planted trees within the station. And completely separately, I was chatting to one of my little cousins who's in university in Coleraine, and I sort of was asking, how do you get up there? And she says, I normally go as far as like up to sort of Derry, London Derry, and then I just get the train. And I was like, oh, cool. And she's like, yeah, I sit in the train because it's a way nicer building. And I was like, do you know who designed that nice
Yeah.
building's heating and ventilation systems and plumbing? And she was like, no, I don't really know if I want to. I was like, it was me. It's so it's quite a nice.
You're like, you need like, discount real classes. It's okay. I've like got some strings.
I know. I wish I got this camera, but yeah, no. So that was a really interesting one as well. And then aside from that, I've been on a number of projects that have kind of ran for a long time. There was a project that I'm on. I think it's still technically on. I've been working on it since 2016, so it's quite a
Mm-hmm.
long project to be on. But hopefully it gets built, and then I can talk about it
Okay. Okay.
lovingly.
We'll have you back on when it's built, and then you're just
Perfect.
like, yeah, that building.
Yeah. And then sort of a whole host of other things. I've a number of school projects. I did the Carlow and Kells PPP schools projects, which were
Mhm.
all done in 2015, 2016. And that was
Okay.
full 3D first introduction into using Revit.
Right.
And
Okay.
then
Yeah.
at that time, kind of decided I would figure out how Revit can size pipework for me. So figured that out, which was quite good fun, and it saved me a lot of hassle on the job.
Oh my
Uh,
goodness. Wow.
and I think some of the team recently have been doing some work on a project that's quite confidential, but when they were asking questions because something wasn't happening, I was like, "Oh yeah, I did that in 2015. I made a video in 2017. Here it is." And they sat down and watched the video, and they went, "Oh yeah, there's the problem. Oh, that's how we fix it." So it's funny to see that sort of stuff come back
Wow.
the whole way through.
That's oh my goodness. That's because you've had an extensive experience. Like,
Been a long time.
yeah. I it's funny like someone today was telling me this story that we have a couple of senior engineers up in the office and they've been with the company for about 20 years
Mm.
and they got plans in for like a refit
Yeah,
in Bangor in a house and it was like from an architect and like they were looking at or like maybe like it was the architect and then the MEP drawings that they were using and they're kind of looking at the drawings, and I was like, I drew those.
yeah,
Like I drew those when I was like when I was a student, like 30 years ago. And I was like, and they just like kind of layered it over, just like, yeah, this is how we're gonna do it. I was like, oh my god. But yeah, like I've had a couple of projects where like I've seen it from like maybe like stage two, and then like you go all the way to stage like 5 or 6, and you're like, yeah, it's done.
yeah.
Like,
And that is one thing that I think is very rewarding within this industry. That
mhm,
maybe sometimes, like, maybe if you're only working in, say, and not only that's, I don't want to belittle it, but if you're working solely in construction, you
mhm.
actually don't get that sometimes that opportunity to be involved in the design phase where you're starting to work out how things could be better, or
Yeah.
how they could be improved, and maybe you're looking at a set of drawings and you go, okay, we need to construct this, and you might look at it and go, this could be improved. I think we can put in for a change in that. And actually, this could be a better design,
Mhm.
but you may not always get the opportunity for that if that's what you happen to be doing, or vice versa, where you've done a lot of work on design and then ultimately something doesn't get built. Sometimes that's a hard one to take, where you go, that would have been a really, really good project. I really
Mhm.
wanted it to go ahead, you know?
Brilliant. Well, I can't wait to hear more about your future projects next time you're on.
Yeah,
Like that's me,
perfect.
like, as like I do this to everyone's like, well, next time you're on, like you can talk more about this. I'm like, yes, sure guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, Connor, thank you very much for talking to me today and talking about yourself and your career as kind of engineer. You've been brilliant to have on and get lots of useful information.
Brilliant. No, I'm delighted.
Mhm.
And yeah, the from my perspective, I hope that anybody who's listening to this gets involved with engineering. You
Mhm.
know, you don't have to go into building services. You know, I should say that, but
Yeah.
secretly you should go into building services. It is actually a really interesting job. I would say it's very rare that you get massive repeats of doing the exact same thing day in, day
Mhm.
out. It is always quite varied. And if you know, if you think that that's something you'd be interested in, then I could only hope to plug the idea of joining up with CIBSE and becoming a member, because when you're in education, it's totally free.
Yeah.
And you get access to CIBSE journals.
All the guides.
All the guides as well. And even just a resource to see, what's actually happening in terms of the building industry.
That was actually a really good piece of advice you've given. My next question was going to be, do you have any advice for future prospective engineers looking to get into this sector?
Definitely.
But yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Do you have anything to round it up with, like, a snappy, like, sign off piece or
snappy sign off piece?
I should have given prep for that. Like, apologies.
Building services is not just a career, it's a lifestyle. That's so corny.
That's actually the new title now.
Oh, bless.
But no, brilliant. No, thanks, Conor. So my kind of sign off or like just advice. So just sticking with the principal thing, because I was like thinking, when I think principal, I think Principal Skinner from The Simpsons. So I was trying to look for a quote that he says that's about engineering and like it kind of maybe fits into the context of this episode. Best thing I could find was like, no, I'll say it in the right, like, the right, setup. So my advice is to quote Principal Skinner, there's nothing more exciting than science. Okay, and that's a direct quote, okay?
A direct quote?
Yeah.
I thought potentially with the recent solar flares that you were going to go down the route of, the Aurora Borealis in your kitchen at 12 o'clock on a Tuesday.
At this time
of year. And then he's, yes.
Yes.
Can I see it? No.
No. I should have gone for that.
I wouldn't worry about it.
So no, thanks, Conor, and you'll definitely be back on.
Yeah, no, hopefully. It'd be fantastic. And I will say, like, obviously having listened to a number of the podcasts, this is actually really, really good. I'm really impressed with just everything you're doing here, because to be quite honest, I was like, where is the podcast talking about like building services and like the actual the industry that exists in terms of sustainability, structures, civil infrastructure, and actually then into like architecture. And I was like, well, this is a really, really, really good example of talking about like a type of industry that needs probably more attention towards it.
Yes.
And it is, there's so many opportunities for careers coming off the back of it that like, I think I remember coming into university and they effectively said to us, okay, there's 20 of you in the room, there's probably 40 jobs. So take of that what you will.
And if anything, because I remember the anxiety at the time, we're like, am I going to get a job? Like, am I going to be like penniless? Like, what's going to happen? And then just even the comfort of knowing that there is a job out there for you, like it gives you that confidence, and you're like, yeah, I'm going to do well in this industry because this industry needs me. And then, and I'm very much, I was saying to you at the beginning, before we started recording, I'm very much in the opinion that, okay, when you're like 17, 18, 19, you're going to change like throughout, and what you want to do, like it might not be like what you want to do for the rest of your life, it is going to change, and it's okay. Like, that's okay. Like, there shouldn't be any worry about that. And I know a lot of people do worry. I definitely worried at that. And I'm like, what am I doing with my life? But just showing, like, this industry, it accepts, like, everyone. Like, there's so many different areas. Like, if you don't want to do engineering, there's marketing. If you don't want to do any sorts of MAVs, there's, like, promotion of carbon courses. Like, there's so many areas, and it's like, it's a pretty cool career. And as you said, this industry, needs people.
There's so much scope for young people to be involved with it. Like, you could very easily, like, if I was even being a principal engineer specializing in what I specialize in, I could decide that, you know what, actually, I want to be way more involved in actual building physics. I want to move into being really detailed thermal modeling. That's something I think I would really like to do more of. And most companies will go, well, yeah, we think that you're very capable, and we we've obviously backed you for a number of years. We haven't said that we don't want you to be involved anymore in the company. And yeah, if that's something that you want to get heavily involved in, let's go for it. Or maybe you want to become part of a team that is focusing on winning bids or obtaining new clients and stuff. And most companies will fully back that. And I think one of the really important things within building services and this whole industry is that a lot of really good companies give you that opportunity. I don't want it to come across wrong, but an opportunity to potentially fail at something, as in to try it. Like, and when we're looking at designs for buildings, we will go through maybe a lot of concept designs, and we might say, okay, we're going to use a ground source heat pump here. That's the type of technology we've decided we're going to look at. We're going to look at boreholes. We're going to look at extracting heat from the ground. That's what we're going to spend a bit of time investing into. And generally, in some instances, there's a portion of maybe leeway to go, okay, investigate it. Let's see, is it a viable option, through maybe the likes of a low zero carbon assessment on a building. And you can go into the detail and say, yeah, it could work, but it's actually not going to be as efficient if maybe we go down the route of, say, another technology, or combining two pieces of technology together. Maybe we run air source heat pumps and we do PV, and they sort of work in sort of a bit of synergy between them. And then you've had that opportunity to test it, to learn about it, to develop your understanding. Maybe in 4 products' time, that ground source heat pump that you investigated is actually so perfect for this that it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And I think that's nice as well. That there's a lot of scope for that type of thing within the industry.
Like, there's so much potential and so much.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
So much potential energy. Like, I'll stop. Okay, I'll do the actual sign off. Okay, thank you, Conor. Okay, thanks for listening to Carbon Cli-MATES. If you follow us on Instagram at carbon_Cli-MATES, you can keep up to date with all our latest news, posts, and episode uploads. But yeah, thanks for listening. Bye. Do you want to say bye?
Bye.